So what's going on, guys? I am BlackOpsAmazing. Welcome back to another video where today we are back with a Zombies Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. But let's get into it. Here we go and enjoy. So the first question of the day from Tyler says, "Hey BOA, in Black Ops 5, do you think Nikolai and Tank Dempsey should have their own storyline in campaign? If there is a campaign, like Mason and Reznov in BO1. So I kind of know what you're saying, and I've thought this myself. It's a really cool idea, but what if each of our zombies characters, Richtof and Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, had their own separate map or their own separate story? Of course it's not going to happen now because I think we've seen the end of Richtof and Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey. I don't think we're going to get any new stuff for them, but possibly Treyarch could go back and revisit some old stories, things that happened in between our zombies timeline, the parts that we never got to see, so they wouldn't be new. It would just be events that had already happened we just never heard about. Treyarch have said we've seen the end of Primus and Ultimus, but we haven't seen the end of Ether, so whatever that means, I don't really know, but in one way or another, the Ether adventure could continue. And how cool would it be if we got to see Takeo, Dempsey, Nikolai tell their own story? They get their own map where you just play as them, or maybe the three other characters in order to make four could be their friends, or we could just have Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey along with whoever the story is based around. But I think that's pretty neat, and it doesn't just have to be for these, it could be for Stuhlinger, Misty, Malton. These singular maps could tell the backstory of these characters. We know Misty grew up on a farm, her parents were killed. We could see all of that happen in a zombies map, and Misty having to escape the farm whilst battling against the undead. I don't know, just unheard stories from the Ether timeline would, in my opinion, be epic. I've said it before for random survivors, but I'd also like to hear the tales of more familiar characters. The next question from Dean says, "I know there was a cancelled Call of Duty, but do you know anything about it?" So over the years that we've had COD, there's been more than one cancelled game, as you would expect with a franchise or a series, having to think of new ideas, especially for COD since it releases every year now. New themes, new settings, what year the game is going to take place, in the future, the past, the present. Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, whoever it is going to come up with not just one but multiple different ideas for the COD they're making. And well, along the lines, some of the CODs they've started to make have eventually been cancelled and scrapped. So I'm going to talk about 4 different cancelled Call of Duty games. There has been more than this. I'm not going to count board games, but we can expect there were hundreds of more ideas that we haven't heard about. So the first one, which you might have heard of since it's pretty recent, is Call of Duty Vietnam. Initially titled Fog of War, this game was being developed by Sledgehammer Games. As you can tell by the title, it took place in the 60s and 70s in Cambodia and Vietnam. But what's interesting is it was planned to be in the action-adventure genre, and also was only going to be third person. After 8 months of development, the game had up to 15 minutes playable. It was at that point that Activision offered Sledgehammer to work with Infinity Ward, developing Modern Warfare 3, and then in January of 2011, it was confirmed that it was cancelled. At the time, Glenn Schofield, who is now the former general manager and co-founder of Sledgehammer, I think currently he's an executive for Activision, but during an interview in October 2011, he confirmed that the game is most likely cancelled. We know that Sledgehammer then went on to develop Call of Duty Advanced Warfare instead, where in 2014, Glenn said that if the studio was ever asked to make a third-person Call of Duty again, they would continue the development of Call of Duty Vietnam. So the game's still there. From the sounds of it, it's not 100% scrapped, or at least during the time of that interview in 2014 it wasn't. Now, knowing what's happened to Sledgehammer, their current game that they were supposed to be making this year has been overtaken by Treyarch, so things don't look too good for the studio. I would expect COD Vietnam, at least this one, the third person game, isn't going to be coming. Now what's interesting about this is, about 6 months ago, this year's Call of Duty, the title for it, was rumoured to be COD Vietnam, and as I just said, this year's COD was supposed to be made by Sledgehammer. Since COD Vietnam was a cancelled title from years ago, were they gonna bring it back for this year? Is that the reason why Treyarch took over? Because it wasn't good enough? Was this year's COD gonna be third person? I don't know, but the fact that they worked on it for 8 months only for it to be cancelled is quite a long time. They must have had quite a bit of the game finished, although we do know now they have around a 2.5 year cycle, 3 years. And we do have some concept art for the game, which looks pretty good. So yeah, that was the first one. COD Vietnam. I think potentially in the future we could be seeing this again, just not in third person. I think the title of the game could come back, but maybe developed by someone else, Infinity Ward or Treyarch. The next cancelled Call of Duty, which is even more interesting, was called Call of Duty Roman Wars. Initially referred to as Fireteam, this game was being developed in 2008 by Vicarious Visions. As far as I'm aware, these developers have never made a COD, so that would have been interesting. We've only seen 3 developers, Treyarch, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer. Obviously we have other studios like Raven Software that assist, and we had other companies that made remasters, but our main 3 have been Treyarch, Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward, so to see a different company, Vicarious Visions, make their own COD sounds interesting, but unlike other titles, this game would have been played from a top-down perspective instead of first person. Apparently it was never really taken seriously and didn't even receive a request to be moved to the prototype phase. In terms of gameplay, the player would have been a member of the 10th Legion, which was Julius Caesar's elite force of troops. Weapons would have included bows and arrows, spears and shields, as well as the ability to throw sand at enemies. From the little bits of gameplay that we have, one of the levels would have been set during the Battle of Alyssa, where the player would have had the ability to ride an elephant, which pretty much in this day and age would have replaced the tank. So I don't know what to think about this. It definitely sounds interesting. The fact that this was being developed in 2008, the time when World at War came out, is very interesting. This was pretty much when Call of Duty was kicking off, when it was becoming popular. So the fact that this was even thought up and they began developing it, because there is gameplay, is interesting, but no one took it seriously. I can kind of see why a Roman Call of Duty game does sound stupid. Not gonna lie, it doesn't sound the most interesting. But a different studio developing a COD, that's something I would like to see. We've had the same 3 for such a long time now. Well, Sledgehammer are pretty new, I guess, but I would have liked to have seen their take. I don't think this is a game that's going to be coming back, but yeah, let me know your thoughts about that one in the comment section below. Now, the third cancelled COD game was called Call of Duty Devil's Brigade. 5 months before the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a small team of developers began working on a top-secret third-person Call of Duty spin-off. Set in Italy during World War II, COD Devil's Brigade would feature squad-based mechanics, exploration, and a grim story about a team of skillfully trained killing machines. However, just like most of these games, about 9 months into development, in March 2008, the game was cancelled. Now, as far as I'm aware, it was being developed by Z-Axis Games, I think that's how you pronounce it. I've never heard of this studio. Exactly why it was cancelled, I don't really know. This one's a little bit more mysterious, but it was yet another third-person COD that was cancelled. It's clear that Activision, during 2008, that time were trying to make a third-person COD but couldn't get it right. I'd be interested to know if they're ever thinking about doing it in current times, because third-person games, especially Fortnite, is very popular right now, so a third-person COD, I'm willing to bet that Activision would have thought about doing that, especially seeing what Fortnite has done. I don't know, but for me personally, third-person shooter games aren't my favourite, and I don't know, can I see it working with Call of Duty? Yes, of course it can be done, but it just seems like every time they attempt to do it, they can't get it right. There's nothing that really sounds special about this one, it just takes place during World War II and focuses on events that happened in Italy. So yeah, this is perhaps one that I wouldn't bring back. And then the final COD game was Call of Duty Tactics. Now, the only thing we really know about it is it was going to be a strategy game developed by Vicarious Visions once again. I feel quite bad for that studio having another COD game cancelled. We can guess because of the year of development, it would have been based during World War II. When Call of Duty first started off, COD 1, 2, 3, World at War, they all took place during World War II, and then we started to get into the modern era and then into the future, and now we've gone back to Modern Warfare. So because of the time of when this was being developed, we can guess it was set during World War II. What about? I don't really know what wars or what location, but it was a strategy game. Not my type of thing. I know a lot of people do play these type of games. I can't see a massive reason as to why this would have been cancelled, because surely it's a pretty simple thing to develop. It's pretty difficult to get wrong. So why this one was scrapped, I'm not too sure. Anyway guys, there we go, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like, rate it if you want to. If not, it's totally fine. Thank you guys for watching anyway. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.